All right, welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus Show. I'm Onebar with Lupagus. We got the man, our favorite draft analyst, Joe DeLeone, in the house. Joe, familiar face of the show. Happy draft season, man. It's good to have you.
Appreciate you guys having me. And look, I got to ask this. I know you guys have a lot of other draft guys come on here throughout the cycle. Are you saying that to everybody that they're your favorite draft?
We don't mean it if we do. We don't mean it if we do.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just checking. Just checking.
I'm gonna have to phrase that better next time.
No,
but I think you are. Anybody, I can say with confidence that the other guys we have on are not watching the show. So Joe, you are our favorite.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And latest mock draft dropping. I didn't even know you wrote for Pro Football Network. You drafted you chucked your mock draft out there today. First one of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to be contributing with Pro Football Network during this draft cycle. One of the many new places my work is going to be found. Got a couple announcements coming. But yes, it felt really good to throw out my first mock and be able to kind of project early before the season ends and with the Senior Bowl kicking off this week, some of the expectations. If I remember off the top of my head, I had the Vikings taking Omar Norman-Lott, who I'm a very big fan of, and I think that a lot more people need to be talking about him as a late first rounder.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, Mason Graham. I think he had 10 or 13. I don't know. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but go check it out. Links are in the description. Also, you're all over the place. Rufino and Joe's show. Hacks. You got so many damn shows. Hit up the links down in the description. He's everywhere. But let's get into this, and let's just start with the Vikings at 24. And Daniel Jeremiah put something out there earlier that kind of is on the same theme of this. But with 24, Vikings don't have many picks. We're hoping we trade back, get some additional draft capital. But in your mind, how big is that talent gap from 24 to say like the 40s? Does it drop off?
I think that in vein of what you're referencing with Daniel Jeremiah, I think you put it perfectly. If you're a team that's picking in the late 20s at the end of the draft, you're actually in perfect positioning. But if you're somebody picking at 12 or 13, it's really ugly real estate. And the reason for that is that there's about 7 or so guys that are blue chippers. There's 2 really good quarterbacks in Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward that maybe wouldn't be the first quarterback in most years, but are going to get pushed up because of desperation that we typically see at that position. But outside of those elite defensive prospects, it's a lot of guys that are going to have second-round grades. It's a lot of guys that are going to have late first-round grades for a lot of these teams. So for that note, for the Vikings, there's not going to be much of a talent gap between who they're going to get and who is going to be selected 10 picks ahead of them. There's probably a really good chance that guys that they really highly value as players who could be quality starters and early contributors in their career, that they could slide to them. I think that this year more than ever, we're going to see a huge disparity in how, where certain teams value certain prospects. And we're going to see that a lot, especially with media members like myself putting out their big boards. I think there's just going to be such an inconsistency, unlike in the past where there's just this general grouping of guys that everybody really values. There's a really wide spectrum of outcomes here, just based on what traits are valued and what various player profiles are going to be emphasized during this process.
I got to ask you one quick one before Lupagus hops in. Same thing. What's more meaty? Is it the cornerback or D tackle if they were to trade back as far as still getting an impact day one player?
Personally, I think that this defensive tackle class is a little bit stouter for that case, for especially for where the Vikings are selecting. This corner class didn't really live up to the hype that we were hoping that it was going to hit in the preseason, because like one guy, for example, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, that was a guy that we were hoping that could be a riser, that could progress if he added a little bit more strength to his frame. But he went down really early with an injury at the beginning of the year. Siobhan Ravel Jr., who I had slotted in my mock draft going pretty early, he's somebody who was lost very, very early for ECU due to a season-ending injury. It's a bit of a who's who from there. I think it's going to be a lot more guys going in the second and third rounds of, the Jahdae Barons of Texas or Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, Darian Porter from Iowa State. There's just a lot of names that, depending on scheme, are going to be valued differently by teams. Defensive tackle, though, is loaded. There are a lot of space eaters. There's a lot of guys that are going to be super overwhelming to opposing interior offensive linemen. I like guys like Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. I mentioned Omar Norman-Lott from Tennessee earlier, who's super bendy and quick-footed. And then there's wild cards like Deone Walker from Kentucky, who's enormous, but had a really sloppy year this year and was really inconsistent. We can roll all the way until like the 4th or 5th round, and there's just going to be so many different options with prospects like Aeneas Peebles, who's at the Senior Bowl this week, and I think that another guy like Thor Griffith from Louisville is an even deeper guy that's underrated in this class. There's just a lot of different directions you can turn a defensive tackle compared to corner.
Let's stick with D tackle. Mason Graham, consensus number 1. I mean, who's your number 2? Like, who's that next guy up after him?
Right now, for me, it's Kenneth Grant, his teammate, who complete opposite body type. He's 340 pounds. He's 6'3". He kind of reminds me a little bit of Dexter Lawrence in the way that he's built and the way that he's able to just really overpower opposing guards. That man is insane for how easily he's able to move at his size. He's able to move like that of a 290-pound defensive tackle. He's going to test with some crazy numbers. We were in awe of T'Vondre Sweat, and I think that Kenneth Grant is in a really strong position to challenge a lot of those numbers that we saw at last year's NFL Combine. To me, he could be somebody that we're talking about after his rookie season as one of the best defenders in the class, and I think that his ceiling is just super high, as well as providing a really strong floor.
Percent chance he gets to 24?
I think pretty low, admittedly. Probably pretty low. I'm sorry.
You're not our favorite anymore.
Yeah, sadly, I don't think he's gonna be there, though. I think that some team, he might even be worthy of going in the top 10. I think that some team is gonna fall in love with him during this process because of the testing numbers.
East-West Shrine and the Senior Bowl, big games coming up Thursday and Saturday. Who's a guy that by the end of those games is just going to stick out and everyone's just going to fall in love with him? A guy that you probably already know. Like, who's that sleeper guy that we should keep our eyes out in this game?
Yeah, I think for the Shrine game first, Kobe Bryant, who is the corner from Kansas, is somebody who's gotten plenty of buzz this week in Texas. And he was a player coming into the year that I thought could have moved up into the first round, but Kansas wasn't that good. He kind of had a quiet season. Maybe he's somebody who at the Combine, and if he finishes up this practice week strong at the Shrine Bowl, that he could be a early day 2 prospect. But he's just really sticky in coverage. He is tremendous at playing the ball in the air. I also, and this is more of like a deep pull and not really on the radar for the Vikings because they're not going to draft the quarterback. But Kyle McCord is somebody who I think is important to pay attention to during the cycle because the quarterback class is so awful. If there's somebody who former 5-star has just the general tools and finished the year really strong at Syracuse that could end up going, somewhere on day 3 and end up working his way into a mainstay as a backup quarterback, I think that's what Kyle McCord can do. At the Senior Bowl, this roster is loaded, and it's extremely difficult for me to pinpoint and pick who I like the most. But Armand Membao from Missouri is somebody who I really want to see how he's going to do in these one-on-ones. He is a little bit more stoutly built at 6'3", but he's got super long arms, super light-footed. I want to see how he's going to show up in these one-on-ones and how physical he can be. And then on the other side, we've already seen him a little bit out there from the first practices, but I really like Mike Green from Marshall. He is a super explosive guy. He's a really fluid mover. He's got pretty good hands for a redshirt sophomore, and he was really dominant this year coming from a G5 program. So Mike Green is another guy that I think could continue to move his way up in the eyes of evaluators.
All right, Joe, in your mock draft, you got one running back going in round 1. What's your overall thoughts on this class as a whole? Will there be value in round 3 for running backs this year?
Absolutely. This is one of the best running back classes that we've seen in the last 10 years, maybe more. I think that there's a capability to find your number 1 leading rusher for the first 3 rounds. That can't be said for most drafts. Ashton Jeanty is obviously the prize of the pack, but I look at my next highest ranked guys in Omarion Hampton from North Carolina and DJ Giddens from Kansas State. Those are 2 big body guys that move ridiculously well for running backs of their size. But when we move into rounds 3, 4, and 5, there's options like Quinton Judkins, who had a really big national championship performance, who runs hard and could be a really just nice addition as a second running back. I think Cam Scadaboo, who's not like a super premier athlete, but another player who runs really freaking hard and is going to break tackles, could be a nice third addition to a running back room. One other later pull that I really love in this class, I love Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. I think that he has every box checked that you're looking for in a prospect that can just stick on a roster for a really long time, maybe bounce around between a couple of rosters, but just play a really long NFL career as one of the better second running backs in the NFL because he fights for extra yardage. He is an aggressive blocker. He shows impact as a receiver. He's got the right ideal build to win in short areas, and he's got a really strong lower body. All of those things that you're looking for in a running back prospect to just be a mainstay and a reliable player if your starting back goes down, he's somebody that I would definitely want to turn to. But there are a million names that we could sit here and continue to rattle off that any of them could turn out to be 1,000-yard rushers in the NFL.
Damn.
Joel's getting the draft juices pumping. Vikings need a running back. They might need a couple running backs. Position-wise, like you already said, quarterback. What's the position that, like, just mildly ass this year? Like, if you're out there looking for someone at this position, it's like, this is not your year.
Yeah, it's quarterback. I got to just reemphasize there. I think that there's talent and depth at a lot of these positions, but quarterback's awful. There's two guys that could start, and I think that there's even still some volatility in expectation for Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. But I honestly, I wouldn't take Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart in the first round. I would take them somewhere on day 2 if you're a team that wants to just, throw a dart at either Jackson Dart, who's super experienced and poised, or Jalen Milroe, who is a crazy athlete. But after that, I mean, the options are terrible. Will Howard's a fine player. Kyle McCord's a fine player. Riley Leonard had a really nice playoff run, but there's just a lot of not fully developed prospects and a general lack of tools that I think teams that can buy into. In addition to that, though, I think that this tackle class, it's not getting illustrated enough early how weak it is. I keep seeing people mocking Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks in the top 10 of some of these mock drafts, and I don't think that this tackle class is worthy of any of them being selected that high. I think that there could be some desperation for teams that need to fix their offensive lines, but the interior offensive line class is far better than the tackle class. Most of them should go to the middle to the back end of the first round.
Nice. Sorry, I had to leave. My dog was making a lot of noise over here. Want to go out. So.
I thought
you didn't like my takes.
Yeah,
no, I love this quarterback class. Damn it, no.
Stick on quarterbacks quick. If I just love asking this question. It makes me feel good generally. JJ McCarthy, if he's in this draft, where does he go?
Man, I think there's two ways to look at this for JJ McCarthy.
God, he's going undrafted, isn't he?
No. I think that because the two ways of looking at it is like he declared as of last year and he was in this class, or if he stayed in school this past year and had another year to develop, how does that pan out? I think if he came back to school and he was a little bit more improved, I think the Michigan team would have been a lot better. Didn't have many receivers to throw to, so that might have been a little bit difficult. I think he for certain would have been the number one quarterback in this class. I think if he declared as he was last year, it would just be a debate amongst him, Cam Ward, and Shedeur Sanders. I think it would be a 1A, 1B, 1C situation amongst those three guys. But there would probably be a very strong argument for him to go first overall. He was the right decision, at the time. And I think that, and I remember talking about this here when you guys asked me about JJ McCarthy back then, that I was a little uncertain if it was worth it. And it probably definitely would have been to his benefit of him being the first overall pick and in that conversation. He wasn't in that conversation last year. But for the Vikings' sake, selecting him where he did and him not playing at all this year, them not having to take a swing in this draft with so many poor options, having that future figured out, even if McCarthy, say he doesn't start next season, pure hypothetical, they have that figured out. They don't have to continue to go through multiple drafts like they were basically doing with Kirk Cousins and just hoping that lasted as long as it did. The fact that they were winning and have JJ McCarthy on the roster, I think makes them one of the biggest winners of last year's draft.
Speaking of winning, was there anybody you picked last year? Maybe you were tooting his horn that, lit up to expectations. Maybe no one else did, or the opposite of that, where someone you didn't like exceed your expectations this year after seeing what they did the first year in the NFL?
Man, that's a really tough question. I'm trying to think of somebody who would fit that mold of that type of a pick. I mean, I think that for one, Caleb Williams definitely comes into that conversation as somebody who I think we had high expectations for the Bears. And one of the things that I was saying was that I thought that they were going to be a playoff team. Turns out it was the Vikings in that conference that was the real actual playoff threat. I think that Caleb Williams needs to really prove a lot. I think in this upcoming year, he needs to prove that he can help take this team in the next direction of actually winning football games. He needs to be a lot more poised. And we knew that there was going to be some rough stretches because it was a hard transition to go from the improvising nature of the way that he played the position to the NFL, where he needs to actually drop back and read opposing defenses. I think that is inevitable with Ben Johnson taking over. But for me, he stands out, and Rome Odunze is kind of in that conversation as well, because like we didn't get the degree of impact that we were hoping for. We thought that this could have been, a 900-yard receiver in his first year, and it was kind of a lot of weak performances from a player that was super dominant at Washington.
I mean this in the least creepiest way. I could listen to you talk football for days, Joe.
I appreciate that.
So we're just going to prolong this for about another hour. I'm just kidding. No, this is fantastic. That's why we love having you on. You got a deep sleeper? Who's tugging on your heartstrings in those rounds 5 to 7, whatever, undrafted, wherever you want?
Yeah, I think one player who he might not end up being a deep sleeper at the end of the day, but Charles Grant from William & Mary is somebody who I discovered a couple of years ago. He was a 260-pound tackle at William & Mary, and I found him on tape back when I was scouting for RPM, which was a scouting scouting company that was providing recommendations to agents. And I kept pushing him, and for some reason, some of these agents didn't want to take him. And I believe he's at the Senior Bowl this week. There's a chance that a lot of other draft evaluators are saying that he could be an early day 2 pick. I don't know if I'm all the way there that's going to happen. But to me, he is somebody who, as he's added weight and for how easy of a mover he is and how flexible he is, I think that he is going to be one of the potential biggest steals of this draft if he hits his ceiling and he plays to his true potential.
Damn, A+. Joe, it was fantastic. You are our favorite draft guru. No doubt.
That's all I need to hear.
What's your coming months? Just hopping on, just doing a ton of shows. What do you got? What do you got shaking?
So I'll be doing some more contributions over at Pro Football Network, doing more mock drafts and some scouting reports. I'm also there will be an announcement coming on some video stuff coming with another outlet, and I can't say anything for certain yet because contract hasn't been signed. The ink is not dry yet. We're at the 1 inch line. Once that's out there, but be on the lookout. I'll be tweeting about it at Joe DeLeone on Twitter. Guys, appreciate as always, and I'm sure that we're going to catch up again soon.
Appreciate
you, man. Don't forget to eat those bush beans. They're going to expire at some point. Man.
I know, those are staying there forever.
That's going to explode pretty soon. Pure botulism.
I hope not.
All right, Joe, we appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, see you, Joe.